Recording now. And welcome everybody. Thanks for playing along with our little icebreaker here, introducing yourself. Actually, I'll put my video on real quick so you can see who I am. My name is Chris Price. I'm the Academic Programs Manager for the SUNY Center for Professional Development. The SUNY CPD is in Syracuse, but I'm coming to you from Rochester, New York. I live in Rochester because I used to work at SUNY Brockport as the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching Director. And that's how I got to know Ruth Childs, who's joining us today. And when I was the director of CELT, Ruth used to do in-person workshops for us on using theater techniques to improve your presentation skills in the classroom. And so I noticed, I still teach for Brockport online as an adjunct, and I noticed that she was doing a session for Brockport, and I said, hey, can you do that for all of SUNY? And she said, of course. So Ruth lives about 1.5 miles up the road from me here, and we met last week, talked it over outside, of course, socially distanced. But I think she came up with a really good plan for a lot of people signed up. So we had over 200 people sign up. I see 93 in there now. So we're going to have to modify a bit from what she did at Brockport. But I think we came up with a good plan. And like I said, we will be recording this and sharing it with everyone who registered. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ruth.
All right. Hi, everyone. I hope you can see me okay. So welcome, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to teach this workshop. Like Chris said, I teach at Brockport. I'm in the theater department, and I'm starting my 20th year. So in a very unique and interesting way, as the rest of us are. And the best way I tried to think about this workshop is thinking about it as if we've all been, or the best way I can think about teaching this year is imagining we've been cast in a play in a role that we don't necessarily want to be cast in, but we're accepting the role and we're going to do it. And the best way to tackle this role is to use theater techniques to help us communicate more clearly through the mask, through the screen. And it's not our dream role for sure, but we're going to do it and do the best we can. So the plan for today is a participatory workshop. I hope you can take part in some of the exercises. Obviously, I can't really see you doing them and I can't hear you, but I trust that you're trying it out. And we'll make sure that we have time for Q&A at the end. Chris and I talked about having about 15 minutes left at the very end. So that's about it for the intro, Chris, if we want to put people into the chat rooms.
Okay, we have exactly 100 people, 101. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to create 20 chat rooms. I'm going to go to the next slide so I can explain directions for you. I'm also going to share this presentation chat right now because the directions are on the presentation. So here's the link that should give you access to this presentation so that you can, there are only 2 slides, and the second slide tells what we're going to do during the breakouts. So just in a minute, you're going to be put in a breakout room in Zoom of about 5 people. It might be a few more because it looks like we'll probably have a little bit more than 100. We're going to create 20 rooms. We're going to have you in there for about 8 minutes. So that's going to go very quickly, of course. And in the group, just do quick introductions so you all know who each other are. And then what we really want you to do is share what you want to learn from this session while you're here today. And then we want you to choose one person from your group as a spokesperson who will, in the chat, summarize when we return to the full group what you want to learn kind of collectively, kind of summarize what, if there was a common theme and what you all want to learn. And then, Ruth and I will look at that when we all come back in about 8 minutes to help sort of figure out what she's going to emphasize over the next hour or so to make the most of our time together. Okay, so hopefully, again, I'm going to share, if you're just joining us again, I'm going to put the link to this presentation in the chat so that you can have the instructions when you're in your breakouts. And Michaela was going to, oh, we lost a few people. They didn't want to do breakouts. Oh, then they're coming up again. So Michaela, you're going to create the 20 breakouts and just throw folks in there for 8 minutes?
Yes, so Breakouts, I'll create the room now. You'll automatically be placed in there. It's 4 to 5 people per room.
All right. And I'm going to pause the recording. Zoom recording. And I'll just say, Ruth, in our room, we had everybody was teaching remotely this semester, so they weren't as concerned about the masking thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how to be more dynamic in an online space, if you like to move around a lot face to face, how do you do that online? How do you be more engaging if you're having to use PowerPoint more because you're online? That's sort of summarized what our folks were interested in. And if everybody else, again, if one of you from your group, hopefully you picked someone, just put in the chat and I'll look at the chat. Maybe Ruth, you could share what your group had to say.
Yeah, most people in my group were concerned about how to be engaging with students in person and online, and also how to teach very specific things like ultrasound or legal computer courses online, and when you don't have the stuff with you, essentially. So, and I guess how to be more dynamic on screen or using when half of your face is covered with a mask. So that's what we talked about.
So those of you that are the spokespeople, if you could just put in the chat, I wish we could give everybody the opportunity to talk, but we just kind of don't have time with the number of people today. So if you could just put in the chat and I'll read them to Ruth. So Andrea in group 2, she said, consisted of new instructor and curious individuals who wanted to learn everything SUNY has to offer. Okay. Actually, before we leave, remind me, and I will send you, I will copy a link to all the recordings and the sessions we did over the summer in the Remote Teaching Institute. So if you didn't participate in that, there's a ton of great recordings there for folks to take advantage of. Two of the folks in that group have experience teaching theater and film and want to expand on that. Megan says, new communication strategies they want to learn techniques to share with faculty. Guidance on if this will be scheduled later. I'm not sure about what that means. This is it's helpful since not all campuses have a theater department, right? That's why I asked Ruth to come. And it came, yeah, not all campuses have theater, so theater skills will be helpful. Camera, using the camera. How do we achieve walk around and engage? So that's come up twice. How do you kind of be more dynamic?
Mm-hmm.
How do you project your voice to a small number of students in a larger hall with masks and plexiglass? And I know you're going to talk about that, Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
Working with international faculty and challenges of accents through a mask. That's an interesting problem.
Yeah.
Different tips for different disciplines. Better Zoom presence is one I'm seeing here. I don't know if you're looking through it too.
Yeah, I'm looking. I think, you know, most of what I have planned, I hope will address some of those real specific things that people want to work on. And like I said, we're going to try to save 15 minutes at the end. So if you have a very specific question, hold it for the end and I'll try to answer it if possible. So.
Yeah, and one of the things too is the whole, and this is actually interesting with online classes. This is something that happens at face-to-face, like the blank faces in Zoom. It's hard to read facial expressions or with masks on too, right?
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Well, we're also, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, we're also going to save this chat too. So we'll post the chat anonymously to the recording so that everyone can kind of see the issues, and then we'll go back later. And if we have to offer something that doesn't get covered today, we can maybe offer something at a later date. Okay, I'll just keep scrolling through this. If you want to get started, and
why don't we get started just in the interest of time? And so again, as I'm a theater professor, so to me, a good actor prepares, communicates, and is authentic. And in thinking about how we've all been cast in this role this semester or this year maybe, I think those qualities will help us out in our online teaching and teaching wearing a mask. The more we prepare, the more we communicate, and the more authentic we are, the more successful we will be. So another part of that is thinking about the teaching strategies we've used. For me, it's over 20 years they're no longer relevant or useful. Those habits may have to be put aside for now, and we have to try out new things. So one thing that came up in my Brockport workshop was this idea of how do you project if you're wearing a mask? How do you reach out through a screen to people? And I think doing some sort of warm up is really important. So actors obviously warm up their bodies, voice, and breath for rehearsal and for performance. And I think actually now it's more important than ever to do that. So my experience teaching some of my classes outside and some in a huge theater with maybe just 20 students in it is that I need to be extra mindful of my breathing and my body when I'm trying to connect with these students. And I actually need more breath than I've ever really needed before when I'm speaking. So I almost feel like I'm playing a tuba or some really big wind instrument when I'm trying to project out to my students. So if I consciously use more breath, I think I'm more successful at that. And also, if you really increase the amount of breath you're using in your speaking, it helps manage stage fright, which I think we can all relate to at different times. It helps you slow down your speech, which is extra. I just saw someone said they played the tuba. Great. So you can use the same tuba breathing to communicate through your mask. It helps you slow down. It helps you manage stage fright. It helps you have more vocal choices available to you, which I heard from a few people in the chat that they want to have more dynamic speech. So if you're really using low, deep breaths, you will have more vocal choices. And it helps you obviously be louder and clearer and less likely to harm your voice. So why don't we all do a little breathing right now? So if everyone just close your eyes and put your hand on your low abdomen. So ideally you'll put your thumb on your belly button and let the rest of your hand just kind of hold your low belly. And just close your eyes and take 3 nice, easy, deep breaths. And I'm going to do it too because it feels good. And then the next thing I'd like you to do is simply add a shh sound to your exhale. All right, so keep your eyes closed, keep breathing from your low abdominal area, and just add a shh to your exhale. Great. So the next thing you're going to add on is a really simple phrase from one of your classes. So instead of just the shh sound on the exhale, you can just try something like, good morning, everyone, or I'm going to take attendance now, just a really short phrase, and add that to your exhale. And again, what you want to try to do is imagine your voice and your breath are coming from that low belly, not from here, right? So try that a few times and just see how that goes. All right, I'm going to trust that everyone's doing okay out there. So this is definitely one of the challenges of teaching like this. I'm not getting feedback directly from you. But again, if you imagine that you're breathing, or really try to breathe from your low abdomen when you're teaching with a mask, when you're teaching online, it's going to give you more vocal variety. It's going to help your speech slow down. It'll manage your stage fright. And, you know, I've been an actor my whole career and I still get stage fright. I definitely had stage fright for this presentation today. I've never done anything quite like this. It'll help you maintain good projection, and even if you're speaking through a computer, the more grounded your breathing is, the more you can reach through the screen to people and not feel like you're narrowing in like that. And it helps calm you down, right? So moving on, I just want to get into some sort of nitty-gritty with primarily on-camera teaching and recording stuff. So I would suggest that you place your camera or your computer in a place where you get most of your head and shoulders in the screen. You don't want to be leaning over your computer or have it too far above or below. You want your head and shoulders visible to the students. That way you can really use all your communication skills, all your dynamism in your face to help communicate the message. Only about 50% of what is communicated to people is the actual words. The rest of it is what we're doing with our faces and our hands, perhaps. So set yourself up with your computer camera so that you really get your head and your shoulders in the screen. The other thing I would say is make sure you have good lighting. And if you're doing all your teaching online, or recording a lot, I would even invest in one of those light rings because it'll help you have better lighting. And the more you are visible to the students, the better lit you are, the more you can communicate with them. Just make sure you're looking at the camera. I have a problem with that. But if looking at yourself is distracting, then definitely take yourself off the screen. Be aware that a microphone is helpful, but it does pick up every single sound. So it doesn't tune out the things that we don't want to hear. You can use headphones if that's helpful. A thing with costume is, I would say dress the part. It helps you feel professional. It helps put you in that performance mode. Even if we're teaching at home, it might be tempting to just wear your hoodie and cozy stuff, but at least the top half, dress up, and it helps you, I think, be more ready to communicate with the students. Just a little note on what you're wearing. Careful of wearing too many crazy prints because that can get distorted in the camera. And also don't wear something the same color as your skin tone or as the wall behind you. Otherwise you just disappear. Let's see. Oh, props. So I think props are really helpful when we're teaching online or doing a recording because it can help bring to life the material. And a lot of what we saw in the chat was that people were concerned with how to engage, how to make things more dynamic. So practice teaching with props, have things that you can use to demonstrate what you're talking about to the students. And make sure that they're all close by. You don't want to have to go out of the screen to get the thing that you need. So have your props, have them close. One thing that I think is really helpful if you're teaching online is to stand up. It helps you have more breath. It helps put you into that performance mode that is important, gives you that extra level of communication. So definitely if you're able to, stand up for recordings and live teaching. One thing that came up in the Brockport session was, how can I communicate better with classes that are part online and part in person? And I don't have, I don't have a solution for that. I think it's really difficult. And I talked to my husband about it last night because he's a high school teacher and he has students in the class. And at the same time, he's got kids Zooming in. And one suggestion that Chris had, actually, I'll give you credit, Chris, is trying to do some activities where everyone is using laptops or devices so that they're all equal in the classroom. And I also think doing icebreakers outside of class where they can see each other's faces would be helpful as well, just to try to build up more communication between the students. So it's not all about you trying to communicate to all of them. Okay, anything else for, oh, one thing, so technology-wise, if you're really having a lot of trouble losing your voice or you have pain when you're speaking from really trying to project through this mask or like out to the students, you might want to see if you can invest in what's called a lavalier mic. They're wireless mics. They're quite expensive, but a lot of K through 12 teachers use them. So anyway, so you might want to look into that. All right, so moving on to the idea of rehearsal. A good actor obviously rehearses, and I think we need to rehearse our material before we teach live, teach online, or record. It really, really helps. So practice, talk it through. You know, I practice this presentation multiple times. Stand up, work on when you're going to add a gesture, how am I making eye contact, when am I going to stand still, when am I going to move. Practice when if you're teaching in a room, we have rooms that have sort of a sneeze guard like this that you get at the grocery store, that big plastic screen. So practice when you're going to stand behind that, when you're going to come out from behind the screen. It really, really helps. Those of us who are pretty physical in our teaching, I would say make a note of when you're going to move around and when you're going to stand still. So just set it and rehearse it. It also helps for you to time out your classes. What you've probably noticed is that everything is taking more time now. Even taking attendance takes a long time. So the more you can say, okay, I've got 5 minutes for this, 10 minutes for this, 5 minutes for the conclusion, I think that will help you. One other thing we do in the theater is we do a fight call. So what this is before every performance and before dress rehearsals, we practice under show conditions, the things that are very complicated. So maybe it is some sort of stage combat or a battle scene. We practice that over and over again until it's perfect before the show. So I would say we need to do a fight call with the difficult stuff, practice it ahead of time so that you feel confident in it and you can iron out all of the kinks. And also have a plan B, because we all know that sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. Okay, so in theater we have a script. That's what we say and do on stage. And I think now more than ever we need a script. So plan out what you're going to say, pare it down to just the essential. What do the students absolutely have to know? And what would be nice if they knew? And the nice stuff we put aside for now. I would say short sentences are really important. We have to be direct. You want to have a clear introduction, clear transitions, clear conclusion. In my classes, I try to start class in a similar way each time. Then there's sort of the middle section, and then I wrap up the class in a similar way. I think it makes it easier. Obviously, communication is really hard at this time. When you can't see someone's face, we don't really know if they understand what we're saying. So something I've been doing in my in-person classes is asking for a quick thumbs up if they get it, thumbs down if they don't, thumbs up if they can hear what their classmate is saying or not. And it sounds kind of silly, but it's actually really helped, because I don't want to keep talking and continuing with the class if half of them didn't hear me or don't understand. So that's just been a little thing that's helpful. And then another thing that I've done that's actually been great, and I've heard from multiple students that they really liked it, is for my in-person and online classes, I've had them do an icebreaker on VoiceThread. So they just do it in their dorm rooms and they ask questions and post replies to each other. And I didn't think of it at the time, but it's the only way they're seeing each other without a mask. And it was really nice for me to see their faces in the icebreaker, but also multiple students said to me they really liked just seeing each other. So I recommend doing something like that a few times through the semester so that at least they can get to know one another a little bit. All right, let's keep going. So a big thing that's come up is vocal variety, engaging the students, how to be more dynamic in our speech. And if you're an actor, this is really important because obviously we're trying to keep the audience hooked in. And we've all sat through those presentations and lectures where it's monotone and there's no vocal variety, and it doesn't matter how interesting the content is, it's just going to make you feel really tired. So when we're teaching through a mask and teaching into a computer screen, vocal variety is more important than ever because it's a great way just to re-hook people back into the content. So we have all these barriers right now to our communication, whether it's being nervous, technology, a piece of fabric over our faces, or teaching behind a plastic screen. And when you have those barriers, vocal variety tends to diminish. And the other thing that happens under any circumstances is if we've said the same sentence or taught the same material many times, we just rush through it because we know what it means and we've said it. But we have to remember our students are hearing this material for the very first time. And there are all these barriers in the way for the communication to happen. So we just have to be extra mindful that those key words and phrases are definitely landing on our students. An actor traditionally uses a change in pitch, a change in volume, a change in the rate of the word, enunciation, and pauses for vocal variety. And they don't do that with every single word in a sentence. It's just the words that are most important. So for our next thing that we're all going to do together, and I just trust that you're doing it, what I'd like you to do is write down a sentence from a class or a lecture that you give. And pick a sentence that has lots of jargon in it and maybe terms that are very specific to your discipline. And just write that down on any piece of paper you've got handy. I'll give you a minute to do that. I'm gonna get some water, which is actually another thing that's really important when you're trying to teach right now with all of these barriers. Definitely stay hydrated. So I'm going to follow my own advice. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everyone's written down their sentence. So first of all, just say the sentence with no vocal variety. So don't try to make it fancy or fun at all. Try to make it a monotone. Great. And then the next thing I'd like you to do is underline the words or phrases that you think are the most important in the sentence. So what are the words that the students must understand? And they might be those discipline-specific words and phrases that you put in there. So underline those. And just for fun, let's try changing the rate of those keywords. So say the sentence and try slowing those keywords way down. Great. And now let's try adding a pause. So you could put a pause before the word, after the word, or both. So you'll say your sentence, you can get rid of the slowing down, but just add a tiny pause before or after or both around the key words and see what that does. All right, and we're gonna do one more. This time try changing the volume of the keywords, and you can say them louder or quieter. Great. And some might feel more comfortable to you. You can also try changing the pitch and enunciating the keywords. And in our natural everyday speech, we normally do this because there are very few barriers to our communication. But when we start adding screens, computers, recordings, masks, our vocal variety tends to diminish. So these simple tools really help us make sure that the keywords are coming across to our students. Another thing is our body language. As I said before, over half of our communication is about the body, face, gesture. So what you can also try doing is adding a specific gesture on those keywords as a way to draw attention to them. And that's something you can try out as well. Okay, just in the interest of time, I'm just gonna wrap up these points here. Eye contact is also really important, so definitely think about that. If you have habits, like nervous physical habits, you want to try to minimize those both on screen and in person because they draw focus away from the key points that you're trying to make. I also just wanted to remind everyone, slowing down is the easiest way to guarantee successful communication between you and the students. All right, so then we get to the performance. We've done all our rehearsal, our text analysis, and in the performance, we just want to strive to be ourselves, to be authentic. I think our students are craving that right now. They're looking for normalcy, and the best way we can help them with that is to be ourselves and be honest with them. Let's see, if something unexpected happens, just acknowledge it, smile, connect with them. It'll really help. And then at the end, I would suggest, you know, especially in these first few weeks of classes, assessment is really important. Send them a quick email. Am I making myself clear in my classes? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And if not, you know, we can try to make some adjustments. But I think that it's really important to see if, you know, all this preparation we've done, all of these tools are actually successfully, if they're helping us really communicate with the students. So thank you. And now what we're going to do is spend a little bit of time answering specific questions. So I'm hoping Chris will help me with that.
Yes, I will. So, yep, we're right on time. It's 10:45. Right. So,
that's a miracle.
Yeah, great. So, way back, there was a good question about like the vocal warm-up that you did earlier. Would that be good to do with students if you're face-to-face, or maybe if you're doing it online even and you're asking them to talk a lot, and that maybe get them like almost like as an icebreaker even?
Yeah, I mean, I think any kind of physical warm-up, breathing warm-up, you can even do tongue twisters, which is really fun. I mean, I teach all of those warm-ups because I teach theater, but I think it helps just forge connections between you and the students. And it also just helps them get away from their stress of their everyday lives and just try to transition to just being in the moment in class. So I have tons of warm-ups. I also I'm just going to show this book and I'll email it to Chris, but this is a really great book and I use it with my students. I'll send you the details on it, Chris, but it's got lots of great ideas in there for warm-ups as well.
All right, maybe I'll throw a link in the chat to it so folks can see it. The next question I saw, someone was asking about how do you stand up while teaching in front of a laptop? There were a lot of suggestions there. Someone said standing desk, boxes, books. Yeah. I don't know if you have one that's your go-to.
Yeah, I'm on a little ledge with my husband's baseball encyclopedia book, which is really giant. But yeah, I mean, I would just build something if you can, because it really does help me. And like I said, it sort of puts you into that performance mode, and it helps with your breathing and your projection. So.
Okay, yeah. I'm just going through to see if there's anything. Is there a limit on how long you think like a synchronous Zoom session should be, or is it, you know, more about breaking up the time?
I think an hour max. Personally, that's about all I can handle. And I think if you do have an hour, I would break it up into small sections of 5, 10, 15 minutes and build a break in. 'Cause I need it. I mean, I think it's really hard for the students to focus for much longer than that. What would
There
you
was
say,
some,
Chris, about
yeah,
that?
I mean, I would say exactly the same thing. I
Okay.
think having a synchronous session go longer than an hour, I mean, it may be necessary depending on what you're teaching, but
Mhm.
no matter what, you need to build in probably more breaks than you
Mhm.
would in even a face-to-face, just because we all know from experience now staring at a screen for longer than that
Mhm.
is really tiring, and our attention really wanes, and we're much more likely
Yeah.
to jump on something else on our computer. It's a lot easier to get distracted when you're staring at
Mhm.
a laptop that has all these other things you could do
Mhm.
on it, right? Someone was talking about earlier, where was it? The camera issues, and getting students to turn on the camera, and just I know we spoke about that, and you've talked a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
I think it's really hard. And I would say if they can at least have their cameras on at the beginning and at the end of class, and maybe if there's an activity where they have to connect with other students and turn their cameras on for that. So it just becomes part of the habit. And I don't know if I read it in the thing you sent me, Chris, but if you explain the rationale for why you need your camera on, so that I think that could help them buy into it a bit more, that it's not to punish them or so you can check out their bedroom wall, but it's to really forge those connections and build community in a classroom, no matter what the circumstances are. So,
Right, but also being flexible, and if there's
yeah, yeah,
and if student just says and
right.
doesn't give you a reason for why they don't
Yeah,
want to turn it on, not being too punitive
right.
with that student, right?
Yeah, and I think that's probably the name of the game right now, isn't it? Like we can't hang on to these tools or habits that we've held onto tightly for our entire teaching careers. We just have to let more stuff go. So let go in terms of the content, let go in terms of how we're connecting with the students. And yeah, you're 100% right, Chris.
Our colleague Adam Rich from Brockport said that it's so hard to use body language and make eye contact when he's tethered to the front of the room behind a screen, and
Yeah.
this is now face to face.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And that's why I was thinking about the more we can do demos and specifically choose when we're coming out from behind the screen or how we're going to use gestures, I think that helps. And actually, in my Brockport session, I had another person from the sciences who was talking about the difficulty of managing labs. So you have to come out from the screen, you're wearing a mask, you're wearing the shield. He wears glasses. So he just felt like he's all foggy and couldn't communicate really important information to the students quickly. And the only thing I could really come up with is like maybe getting a little mini whiteboard that you can write on and take around. So that way it's not just communication like through using your voice, but you can also write it down. And there's even a little thing called a boogie board. They're tiny and you can write on them with a stylus and they erase themselves. But that was the only thing I could come up with for that kind of circumstance. And in the theater department, we have a stagecraft class and students are using power tools. So the same issue applies there. It's safety, and you have to be able to communicate very quickly and very directly despite all of the barriers. So you try that.
Barbara asks, are there any other vocal warm-up exercises you can suggest? I have days in which I'm in Zoom 9 to 5 and my voice is gone almost midday.
Yeah.
Oh, that book you mentioned before might have some, right?
Yeah, the book. And I mean, I don't know.
Remind me the name of that book again, so I'll
It's
pop in
called The Voice Book,
the
and
voice
it's
book.
by Kate DeVore and Star Cookman. But it has it's basically a book for anyone who uses their voice, right? So we all do that because we teach. So, but I would say tongue twisters, humming, neck rolls for your head, stretching out your face, massaging your jaw muscle, all of those things are really helpful. And just be careful not to whisper, and because that actually can harm your voice. So
Interesting. I did not know that. Whispering
Yeah.
can harm your voice.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just put a link to the book in the
Oh,
chat.
great, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, there is an
Um,
ebook version of it as well,
okay.
but
Yep,
it's
I saw
very
that.
accessible, and I think it would just give you more ideas.
Okay, so the next question is, when teaching kinesiology asynchronously, I have to get up from the computer and demonstrate techniques on myself, hip movement, knee movement, ankle,
Mhm.
foot movement. Any suggestions?
Oh, wow. So they're teaching with,
Asynchronously online, so my
yeah,
guess is they're trying to use the laptop camera to
yeah. I'd
demonstrate
say break
things.
it up. So maybe record the lecture portion of it and then take a break, reset the camera, and record the physical demonstration of it. And maybe there's some good OER materials out there or
Oh, that's a good question.
pre-existing short videos that would help.
That's a good
Or
point.
even, I wonder if using a,
Tony's on. Tony DeFranco might know if there's any good
um,
theology OER. Tony works in OER
oh,
services.
perfect. Take it away, Tony. But I wonder if even using like a little doll or something like that might be helpful for that. Little demo, Lego figures we were talking about earlier.
Uh, this is versus Zoom Live. So someone else talks about, it just is related, Thomas, video tutorials have been helpful to me and my
Mhm.
students. Any suggestions on the length of video, concise manner, and other software usage for expediting the tutorial? This is versus Zoom Live. So in other words, in an asynchronous class, you know, in
Mhm.
terms of online tutorials, I've
Yeah.
heard I could just go, I mean, I've heard that 6 minutes is the,
Yeah.
you know, we had a presentation in the Remote Teaching Institute, which again, I will post all the links to the recordings to that in the chat shortly before we finish. But the presenter, and his name is escaping me, from Finger Lakes, but he said he did analytics on it, and any video that was 6 minutes or less, and a MOOC he did, had exponentially more views than anything over 6 minutes. So that
Yeah.
seems to be the kind of magic number.
Right. Which is not very much time at all. And if you're preparing a 6-minute recorded lecture, you need to cut out anything that's not essential. So it just goes back to my point of having a really good script and following it.
That's a good point, because too, and you don't want to have to get too bogged down with editing and snipping things
Right.
out unless you're really good at that video editing stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've always heard, you know, just try to do it all in one take, because otherwise you're really gonna make a lot of work for yourself.
Right. I mean, I really script my recordings out because I need that script to help me stay on track. I get distracted quite easily and can go down, you know, pathways that aren't important right now. So,
Lisa asks, while teaching, what angle do you suggest the laptop or camera be at?
well, like I said, I think pretty straight on, and try to have your laptop at elbow height, I would say. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the session, I think it's really great to have head and shoulders in the shot because it gives you more opportunities to communicate. So if you're a hand gesture person, you can do that. And they can see you smile and see your eyes. So, yeah.
Kimberly says, I feel like I'm completely zapped at the end of my 50-minute class teaching a combo of in-person and online. Aside from breath control, are there any other ways to not run yourself out of energy?
I,
Coffee. No,
yeah,
sorry.
coffee, because everyone likes coffee apparently in this group, so that's good. I agree, I was exhausted the first 2 weeks of the semester, and I would say build in times when the students are doing the work and you just don't have to talk. So break it up. Yeah. And that's kind of a cheeky answer maybe, but I think, you know, we want to communicate this information so badly, and sort of that push is exhausting. So
Benjamin asked a question, and I'm guessing, I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I'm sure our STEM people know. Online tools for showing how to write math examples and solve it in front of them online. Again, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are STEM folks out there, and maybe down below someone actually, there are whiteboards in Zoom and WebEx, but
yeah.
there may be more appropriate tools for teaching mathematics, which I just, again, don't know off the top of my head, but maybe someone else has that. And it may be that we had a whole day on tech tools during the RTI over the summer. And again, you know what, I'm just going to put that link in there now. I'll put it again, because I know some people have to bug out here. Oh, that's the wrong link. That's the link to the book. All right, so let me just grab that link. Let me see if I grab a question while I grab the link. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see here.
And if anyone
All right, mostly it's just suggestions at this point.
Right.
Any other questions? And this will be recorded. This recording will be posted. You're gonna get it if you registered. And also I will put the CPD YouTube page again back up there. That's what will be there as well. And I'm also gonna put the links to the RTI recordings. Let me just see if there are any other questions. I don't, is there a home version dock camera? Someone asked. I don't know. All right, let me grab those links since we are almost out of time. I don't know, any other last thoughts, Ruth, before we log off?
No, I just thank you so much, everyone, for joining this workshop. And I know your time is extra precious this semester, but if you have any follow-up questions, definitely, I would say send them to Chris. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Chris, and then he can pass them on to me. The ring light that I recommended, if you're doing a lot of online teaching, you can get on Amazon. They have a bunch of them. And yeah, just good luck this semester, and thank you.
Someone asked if they could have like discipline specific sessions with you, sort of like, folks in STEM or humanities or social sciences. I know that's been a big demand from faculty in this kind of pandemic pedagogy era.
Absolutely. And I think, I've never done a workshop quite like this where I can't see anyone. So smaller groups, I think, are easier as well, because we can definitely tailor exactly what you need to your discipline or your particular issue with communication. So
yep. So I'm going to put one more time the link to the RTI recordings. There's a lot there if you didn't get to go to any of those over the summer. And then I did put the link to the CPD YouTube page, but anybody that registered today will get a copy of the recording as well.
And Chris,
so thank you, Ruth. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to interrupt. I think Tony was going to say something about the OER.
Oh yeah, great, Tony.
Yeah.
Good OER for kinesiology. Is he still here?
I think so. Tony?
All right, Tony DeFranco, tony.defranco@suny.edu. Or you can email me your questions about OER and I'll get it to Tony or Mike Daly. All right. Well, thanks again, Ruth.
Just left.
Yeah.
Well, it is 11:01. So again, thank you. And everyone seems to have loved your session. So maybe we'll have to have you back for a repeat performance, Ruth.
Yeah, I hope it went well. It's hard to assess when you're talking into the void.
It is. But I don't know. I mean, the fact that nobody really left after you started talking, it's bad when, you start at 100 and it goes down to like 70, but that didn't happen in this case.
Harsh. Yeah.
All right. Take care, everyone. Good luck this semester. Thank you, Ruth.
Nice to meet you guys. Bye.
All right, bye
Thank
now.
you, everyone.